Many times my mind has been like, yo, why did you do this? Why do you have to make it so hard? We had something great. Why did you have to do that? But what I see is that I feel like God continues to put me in position to be the most powerful version of myself. And sometimes that means giving up great things for something that's right for me and for something that will come back later in my life at the most important moment of my life.
Hello, Graham. It's so great to see you.
You as well, Meg. Here we go. Let's do it. I'm ready.
Let's do it. Welcome to Full and Thriving. It has been how long since we last spoke?
Well, the DMs don't count. I haven't seen you since Denver, and that was like 2021.
Yeah, wow. So much has changed.
3 years.
For everyone listening, for context, Graham is the partner of my previous business coach, Autumn, who actually has been on this show before. And I got to know him a little bit. He's also a coach and a men's transformational coach and a business coach. I assume you're still doing business coaching, right, Graham?
Well, I'm actually not. Only work with the guys and only really working with them on just more inner freedom, inner peace, and being more present in all the things in their life, personally and professionally. And then ultimately, for the guys especially, just feeling really, really confident to step into who they are fully, be the natural leaders they are, be the legends they are.
Oh, I love that. And that's something we try to do on this show too. You know, we have our perfectionists and people pleasers. They disown that authenticity to follow the path someone sets out for them. And it's about reclaiming what's true for you. So I love that you're doing that for men.
Yeah, it's been incredible. And on that topic, like I'll just touch because I think this is already relevant. Like for me, what I found, and maybe some of the people listening to this can relate, is when I was doing business coaching, it wasn't the wrong thing. It was just the wrong time. Like it was the right time when I started. But as I went further into it, I realized what it was going to cost me to get where I wanted to go and what I was going to give up. I was going to be giving up a lot of my freedom to build something that was really extensive at a time in my life where I wasn't really wanting to build something that extensive. I had other things that I wanted to go do, other places I wanted to see, other people I wanted to work with before I settle down and decide I want to build this really big school or academy or, transformation center for people to learn how to actually be coaches and earn a living and do these things. And I felt like I was at like 90% with that. Like I loved it and I got so much joy and value from it. And financially it was fantastic, but it wasn't 100. And when I hosted a men's retreat in 2022 with just the guys. And midway through the retreat, I was like, this is where I need to be. Like, this is where I feel so natural. Everything's flowing. I feel zero pressure and everything's in front of me. And that just felt amazing. So, on the topic of like letting go of something that I know is amazing for something that's right for me, like that can be really challenging. Like, this is so good, but this is right. And just giving myself to follow what's right, even if my mind doesn't think that it's the best idea, or it might not be as lucrative, or it might not be as whatever it is. But man, the joy, the freedom, oh man, the memories I've been able to make from that direction have been just absolutely like life-changing, inspiring, altering. And I'm definitely by far the most present, peaceful, powerful, confident, free version of myself I've ever been because of that decision.
I give you so much credit for that because it's really glamorous to go down the coaching coaches route. And it's very lucrative and you were tapping into success with that, but you listened to your own inner voice and your inner peace and brought yourself to this more of it sounds like a transformational healer energy, which is amazing because that's a little bit more of a risk, I think, to take when it comes to creating a sustainable lifestyle for yourself. So way to go listening to your inside voice in your heart.
Thanks, Mag. I really appreciate it. And yes, many times my mind has been like, yo, why did you do this? Why do you have to make it so hard? We had something great. Why did you have to do that? But what I see is that I feel like God continues to put me in position to be the most powerful version of myself. And sometimes that means giving up great things for something that's right for me and for something that will come back later in my life at the most important moment of my life. For me to be able to do something that I previously wouldn't have been able to do if I hadn't. And that's how I think about myself in my life and the big moments that are coming, knowing that everything I'm doing, all the training I'm going through is preparing me for that. And just trusting and surrendering and good things keep happening.
I actually really love that you thought about what you were ready for and timing in your life path choice, right? Because I know when I was young, I wanted to create these huge empires, right? Like, it's like, I want it all now, right away. There's this sense of urgency, this sense of almost desperation that comes up when you put so much pressure on yourself to build something that huge when you're just starting out. Wherein I really admire and appreciate the fact that you recognize it wasn't necessarily the time in your life for that.
Yeah. No, it was like, first of all, I really appreciate you just acknowledging me for that, because it was challenging for me to let go of it. I knew it was right, but it was still challenging. And being in a place now where, like, you know, a couple of years have gone by and I can look back and see how that's opened up my life. I think that it continues to show me that, contrary to what our culture believes, I can still make the right decision for me and be successful on paper, financially, in my business, and achieve the goals that I want. And I think that a lot of our culture tries to kind of corner us in scarcity, that you can't have it both ways. And I'm really big on showing that you definitely can. It just takes way longer. But the trade-off is that I sustain the piece of the experience versus feeling like I'm thrown into another thing and I have to get to it as fast as possible. I feel like I'm dictating the pace of my life now. And before, I was on that train of like, oh, I need to build, get there as fast as possible because, you know, this message is so important. I need to change the world. It needs to be better. I know I can help. I should do everything. And I realized that I wasn't ready for the majority of the things that I visualized. And
Yeah.
I think that that's really challenging, and people struggle with that all the time. I know I did and still do. And in my wisdom and my maturity, and I think that people really overlook the maturity thing, I've realized that I wasn't ready for most of those things. That's why they didn't happen. And if they had happened, I would have fumbled them really hard, or my ego would have gotten super inflated and I would have lost my grounding, which is where I get all my power from anyway. And I would have been putting out things or creating things, but they would be lacking the sauce, that substance that I really have, that now I feel like I'm able to really channel into what I'm doing because it's in front of me and I understand the pace and the order of things. And I understand that I'm just going to, all my messages, all my content, all my business, all my work, all my book, all the things I'm creating are only going to get better with time.
Yes.
Better. So it's all good.
Yeah. I love that. I feel like there's something to be said about life experience and the wisdom you collect along the way. And if you have immediate success without the life experience to back it up, you might not know how to maintain that success. You see that with athletes, right? Who are really young and they get these huge paychecks and then they lose all of their money right away because they've never been given the life experience or wisdom. Maybe they don't even know the value of a dollar, right? So they don't realize the situation they're in. They can't handle it. And it like kind of falls away. And I think that's been my life experience too with building my own business, is recognizing the more experience you get, you were saying there's like that secret sauce that comes up and it gets better. And I completely agree with that. Like over time, building things, you start to build more wisdom and draw from that. So what you make is more sustainable and more impactful.
100%. And the biggest part is the feedback I receive from what I create, I'm actually ready to digest.
Mm-hmm.
So your words, good or bad, don't affect me. Like good, thank you. Bad, I don't even know you. I know me. But a lot of people don't know me. So you're telling me who I am? Oh no, I'm this person, I'm that person. No, this is not good. And then now I'm mentally foreclosed. It's over. Now the connection I had with the creation that I was putting out is severed because I don't trust myself anymore because this person said I'm not good. That's what all these years are doing for me, is they put me in a place where I'm not afraid of any of your criticism. I'm not afraid of any of your praise. And I'm not afraid of my next level. I'm focused on me. I'm centered on me. I'm right here in front of everything's in front of me. I'm not concerned about these things. I'm putting the content out because I want to. I'm building this stuff because I want to. I feel good about this because it's my life. And I feel like that awareness is impossible to transmute intellectually. It has to be experienced.
Mm-hmm. Yes, with life experience comes that little bit of resilience that we need, and that self-knowledge and that ability to stand strong in our truth, where when you are newer to this life, you're going to be more blown around in the wind, right? You don't stand as strong in what you know is right for you. And that's why I feel like I am so called to actually talk about people pleasing in this show moving forward, because I used to spend my life taking what people said to me so much to heart that I would have a vision and completely change it based on a small amount of feedback, or someone's opinion would impact everything. And the fear of rejection or judgment would come into play as well.
1,000%. And I know that's something we're going to talk about today. And I hope the segue, when I think about that, I just think like I have had to acknowledge the fact that I'm infinitely more sensitive and vulnerable than I ever imagined. I think I'm like the most sensitive person that I know. Like I take everything in. I'm hyper conscious of everything. I'm aware of everything. It's a matter of me being okay with that and in the tension of whatever I'm feeling, still acting. Like just consciously moving in the direction that's right for me, trusting that it's going to end up working out for the betterment of other people. And this one has been really, really hard as far as people pleasing is concerned. I had to acknowledge that I was just more inclined spiritually, intellectually, vulnerably, emotionally than other people. I just am. I don't know. Some people are really, really good at chess. I'm really, really, really good at reading people. I just get them.
Well, it makes it hard though. I feel like that's a gift, but if you don't know that it's a gift, it turns into, there's a dark side, which is you're again flowing with the wind, right? You're going to be tossed around based on what you're reading and wanting to potentially fix the situation or remedy it or please people, right? Or like build the thing that you're expected to build because everyone's happier. Like if you're getting that feedback that people are pleased with you because you're so good at reading the room or reading the emotions in the room, then you end up embarking on a journey that wasn't necessarily meant to be yours for maybe who knows how long. Again, back to your story of becoming more of this transformational men's coach than a business coach, that's a really good example of letting maybe that noise that you heard from the outside world of what you should be doing go so that you can connect with yourself.
Yeah, I think to build on that, it's like it's trading what works for what's right. Like I know it works. I know I can have success. I know if I follow the instructions that these 10 other people have put out, the marketers, it'll work. But is it right? And I think that's always been something I struggle with. Like, is it right for me to engage physically with these girls, knowing that they like me and I don't like them as much? I know I should, right? Culture says do it. The guys say do it. Graham doesn't really get a say. And I think that's the curse of reading people is a lot of times they don't read themselves. They're so in tune with everyone else. I'm not asking me like, what do I think about this? Like looking back, it's totally wrong for me. And even at the time when I was doing things over the course of my life, and that was just one example, where I knew it wasn't right for me, I wasn't giving myself the voice of being 100% like, hey, you're the final decision maker. I let culture, society, other people pleasing tendencies be my decision makers. Well, my friends are going to think I'm cool if I hook up with this girl, so I should probably do it. And why not? Why not? What's the harm? I knew the harm. The harm was I was leading someone on. They were going to feel really bad, and it didn't have to be that way. I could just make a friend. Could have made a lot more friends. So I think the other thing with the people pleasing is like, I think a lot of people pleasers simply struggle with letting their own voice be the most powerful voice. Other voices are more
I love that. Yeah. That's so true. It's like you are the ultimate authority of your life. It took me a long time to learn that. I've gotten myself down paths I didn't need to go down because I was letting other people's voices be more powerful than mine. And an example of that is, and I'm sure so many people listening can relate, like when you have a decision to make and you have to call up 10 of your friends to see what their opinions are. And maybe deep down in your heart, you know what you feel, but you listen to what the majority of your friends are saying versus I don't need to ask 10 of my closest friends about this because I actually can hear what my heart is saying. And I know in my heart that that's right.
And here's where the self-doubt comes in. Most people, this is where it segues. Most people, when they get to the point you just mentioned, they don't sit long enough in the tension of the doubt, the insecurity, the unsureness that they can actually be right. And so they assume that as soon as they sit there and they get all the negative feedback from themselves and their voice and whatnot, they immediately just go, it's true, it must be true. Versus doing the actual work, which is the work that you've done, the work that I do, the work that Autumn does, and so many others, of asking questions to those voices. Like, who are you? What is going on? Where is this even coming from? Like, why do I really believe this is true? And on the other side of that, I find a lot of times is the power, is the voice of like, hey, those are not true. by the way. Like this is the decision that you know is best for you. You don't need to ask other people. You don't need their permission either. You just need to be in communion with yourself.
Mm-hmm.
And that was a big
Mm-hmm.
conversation I had with one of my clients yesterday. Is he was struggling to celebrate himself and give himself credit and actually receive praise from other people for being exceptional at what he does. And, you know, went inside and we saw in his mind, like he views part of himself as this very weak and like, I need to protect this part because he isn't as good as I think he could be. And in that conversation with himself and actually giving him the love that he needed, the support he needed, the permission, the thumbs up that he needed, he was able to find communion again and feel like every fiber of his being was moving in the same direction. And I feel like until we can be all moving in the same direction, there's going to be so much self-doubt. How could there not be? One part of you wants to go left, the other part wants to go right, and your friends are telling you to go straight.
I know. I'm right there with you. I feel like that self-doubt comes up when you're not all moving in the same direction. Like there's parts of you moving here, parts of you moving in this direction. And again, you have to listen to yourself and trust that you're the authority to get there. And I know I have so much experience in life. I don't know if this was ever the case for you, but I remember I would be very confident in what I believed, or say I'm like at a business meeting or a work meeting, and I have something to share. And I share this, and then someone pops in with an alternative idea, might not be better or worse than mine, but I assume, because of all of my own self-doubt, that their idea is better, or their idea is the right idea, and I must be wrong. So that was a pattern I fell into all of the time, was this pattern of just deferring to the other person being the right person. And that was really hard. Do you have kind of examples of how self-doubt has manifested for you, maybe, or clients that you're currently working with?
Yeah. I think that self-doubt manifests for me most often in being frustrated that it's not flowing the way that I know it should. Like for me, I'm very conscious of when I'm in the quote sauce, which is my version of I'm so present that literally everything I need is constantly being taken care of. I have infinite examples. That's my whole life. I mean, I literally created a life for myself. I live in the most beautiful place in the world, and I have infinite income earning potential, all for me sitting with people and listening to them and connecting with them at the deepest level we never have. Most people would never know how to build a life around that. I built like the most incredible life around it, and then communities around my incredible life that other people get to be a part of. So I feel like for me, I mean, I'm like constantly being bombarded with love and support and connection and new friends and relationships. And for me, I notice the self-doubt shows up when I'm not in that flow. And it shows up as frustration because how did I get away from where I was? Like I was in the great spot. What about my future is troubling me? What about my past is showing up? Why am I feeling like off? Right. And when that happens, I notice the self-doubt perpetuates. Then I'm like, oh, do I want to do this thing? Do I not want to do this thing? I start overthinking. I never overthink anything. But then all of a sudden I'm like, oh my gosh, should I do this or should I do that? I'm asking Autumn, what do you think about this? And she's like, I already told you. I'm like, well, what do you think about it? And sure, I'll catch myself doing something that I would just never do. And so I think for me, like, at least with my clients, when they're experiencing self-doubt, the only thing that I work with them on is getting present in the moment again. We want to ground. That's it. So I'll have them do some meditation. We'll get to the present moment. I'll have them speak what's coming up on their mind, word for word as it is. And then we'll question it. We'll ask. We'll get clarity. When we get the clarity, it's usually something totally indirect from what's happening that's causing them frenzy, causing them worry, causing them anxiety. And once we get clarity on what that is and how we either don't have control over it or our actions are going to impact it immediately, once they relax and breathe, then they feel like they're back in the space again. The self-doubt disappears. Right? To me, the self-doubt is it's just a little like siren, like a fire siren of like, yo, there's a fire. And most people just ignore it. They let the fire rage. And then they wonder why they're hot and their life's crazy and it's chaotic. It's like, because there's fires and you're not putting them out. You have to stop and actually investigate, like, what is bothering me? Why do I have self-doubt over this thing? I know I'm ready for this new promotion. Everyone says I can do it. I don't think I can do it. Why not?
Do you have examples of like what that fire actually is? You know, when that self-doubt comes out and you're like, oh, wow, okay, let's explore that. What are some examples of like what that represents for them? Like, what's the deeper piece?
Yeah. So yesterday, this with one of my clients, the self-doubt, what came up in this guy is having a lot of success with this new business that he's working on, but he still feels like part of him is still trapped in the past of like, I'm not good enough and I don't get things naturally. They don't come easy to me. Part of him is still believing and playing along with this person that he was, not who he is. So all the work you've been doing is like, dude, we're in the present now. That's already done. But because all of his success is so recent, he still like questions if it's sustainable. So for us, we're focused on the self-doubt's okay. How could it not be there? You're still trusting yourself in a new chapter, in a new season, but it's evident that you've changed. We can consistently agree upon this. The more we consistently agree upon it, the less space there is for self-doubt. See, we don't move self-doubt out. We move positivity in. There's no space for it. If there's no space for it, it's gone. And if it comes back, we just go back to the positivity. So for me, so too, when I catch myself out of the present moment, I don't like transport back to the present. I just simply sit with myself long enough for the presence to be stronger than the anxiety of the future or the worries of the past. And they just move away because they're not that relevant. What's here is relevant. And for this guy, that really helped him to understand, like, I am who I am now, not who I was. It's gone, over. It's okay. And as he brings those pieces of him back, there's a new communion. And when there's presence, there's peace. When there's peace, there's power. And so now he's like, leveled up.
Oh my gosh, this is really fun to hear you explain.
Yeah,
because it's so fun to hear how you explain that, because it's really interesting. First of all, you use the words like playing around with these ideas, like these stories from the past and that version of you from the past that wasn't as wise, that wasn't as present, that wasn't as savvy as you are now. I can completely relate to that. And I hear my clients, especially my eating disorder clients, they'll be like, well, I failed last time I attempted to recover, or I didn't make it this far ever before. How do I know? And you have to provide evidence that you are an evolved person and that you've changed. Like when I was working with Autumn and I had that 9-to-5 job, and I had already tried to be my own boss 3 years prior. And I was like, I might fail at this. I have in the past, I have evidence that I sucked at doing this several years ago. And it got me into a bad situation. And we constantly had to validate that I had so many more years of life experience and wisdom and business experience and financial experience. And I was living in a totally different place to prove that that pattern it was impossible for that to happen again.
Yeah. Well said.
Yeah. Yeah. It's just so interesting to look at self-doubt through that lens. It's not that you're eliminating self-doubt. It is a natural part of being a human, but you are flooding the self-doubt with evidence and positivity that you can move through this challenge.
And this highlights this larger theme that I think a lot of people that you listen to your podcast probably are aware of, because I feel like if you have people that are listening that are personal growth oriented, that want to work on themselves, grow for themselves, they've been exposed to some sort of spiritual content in some capacity or league walls of the universe. One thing that I see a lot of people misinterpret is this idea of completion. And so to completion, eradication, right? So on one hand, I need to be complete. On the other end, that means I can't have any of this. There's no self-doubt. There's no anxiety. There's no nothing. Can't have it. Doesn't exist. Otherwise, I'm not good. And for me, I struggle with anxiety, self-doubt, depression, every single one of the things. I have them all show up once in a while. And then what do? I come back to me. I ask myself why I'm feeling these things. I get the clarity, and then I feel better again. Why? Because life is overwhelming. And here's the kicker. Most people don't pay attention to this, but it's true. I am experiencing all of the emotions, all of the experiences that my ancestors experienced in a different context. Since I am part of them, I am a descendant of them, I am them. So everything they experience, I'm experiencing in different contexts. So of course I'm going to have all those things show up at random times, because it might not even be me. It might just be a reflection of something that was. And that's important for me to be conscious of as well. So and here's what people do. They attach to it. I am this. I am self-doubt. I just doubt myself. Okay, well, if you say that all the time, no wonder you doubt yourself. How about we try saying, I don't doubt myself. I think I can do it. Actually, I know I can do it because, like you mentioned, the evidence suggests that I've made it through everything I've ever done, every adversity I've gotten through. Doesn't matter if it's not with flying colors. And since I keep persisting, my success must be inevitable. Inevitable is the word, which means there's no way it won't, which means that's abundance. It will. So we have to be conscious of that. And this idea of completion and eradication are like so important, especially for young spiritual students. They just think that, hey, I need to be this thing, and that means I can't be those things. But they're actually both things.
Right. It's how you navigate those things as you evolve in life.
Yeah.
And I think it's interesting. I wonder how many people clicked on this podcast episode today being like, I want to eliminate self-doubt.
Yeah.
Or completely eradicate self-doubt. Like, this is going to be my cure-all magic pill I can take to eliminate self-doubt.
Self-doubt's your neighbor who doesn't take out the trash all the time. The house starts smelling. You're like, why does the house smell so bad? Can't take out the trash. So sometimes you have to go out and take out the trash. We have to live with the parts of ourselves, not excommunicate them. I said this to a client recently. I said, integrate, don't alienate. Integrate, don't alienate. Because if you start alienating parts of yourself, now you're in opposition with yourself. You ever seen a person that's warring with themselves?
Yeah, every day.
How do they look?
It's never a fun experience. It's a whirlwind to live in to be a human who's constantly at war with different parts of themselves. And, I think in the recovery work I've done, it's not about eliminating that part, right? Just like what you're saying, it's about becoming aware of that part, nurturing that part, taking care of it, strengthening the other parts that are more helpful for yourself moving forward. And so, I think it's just really helpful for everyone to remember self-doubt isn't necessarily your enemy. It's a little flag that might be raised, little red flag saying there's something that needs to be addressed here. And it's actually an invitation to dive into that and learn more about yourself and continue that evolution.
Couldn't agree more. Absolutely perfectly said. Yeah.
You know what was interesting too? You brought up the word inevitability. Like, you're like, it's inevitable. Like, doing this is inevitable. Tell me more about that, because that is major self-confidence right there. We're talking about self-doubt.
This is the thing, though. It's not confidence. It's the truth.
Okay. I want to hear more.
And most people don't want to accept the truth because that means they have to give themselves life. And most people don't want to admit that their life is actually that word, because our culture constantly bombards us with you aren't, 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 you just aren't. You just. But this is the truth. The truth is that I'm inevitable. Like, if I continue down the path of my personal self-realization, my fullest expression is inevitable. There's no way I can't be Graham. Just like the tree can't not be the tree. It gets the sun, it gets the rain, and it has the soil. It's the tree. It's inevitable. There's nothing that can stop it from being itself. The tree doesn't ask itself, do I want to be great? Maybe I don't want to grow as tall. No, trees, they just grow. Humans, with this conscious awareness, question if it's okay to. Is it okay if I do it? Should I do it? What do you think about it? Right? If that's the way that I am, I'm not inevitable. I'm conditional based on if other people or other culture, etc., thinks it's okay for me to. I have developed over the course of the last 10 years of just like getting real with myself, very simply put, which is what a lot of you do, is get real and grow up, respectfully, of course. As I've gotten real with myself and grown up, I realized that the only thing I can do that will make me feel when I die that I'm fully fulfilled. Fulfilled just means peaceful. I'm just at peace with myself. Like, I lived and I'm happy with that. It's going to require me to be the fullest expression, and I am inevitable in that way. If I don't quit, how can I not get to where I want to go? How can I not become who I want to become? If I stay on the path, how can I not hit the top of the mountain? So on and so forth. And it's something that I share with all my clients, and really try and get the guys in my Leaders Legends men's group to understand that they too are inevitable. That their energy, their pureness, their spirit, their lightness, their love is so strong and so encompassing. Being around them makes everyone feel this way. And thus the inevitability of the world changing rests on their shoulders, which is why for me, it's changed the world by changing yourself. One person has the ability to influence thousands, millions, billions of people. We've seen that over the course of history. So I'm just very convinced that it's true. And when I look at other creatures on our earth and I observe them, they aren't anything other than what they are. And I think that that's really beautiful and that's really natural. And we can do the same thing. It just requires an unbelievable amount of unlearning of all the things that aren't us. And then a rebuilding of this internal structure and framework of, I am committed to being this person. this person because it feels really good. And because when I'm around people, they feel really good. And the world is better because I'm really good and they feel better. And why would I not want to live that way? And there are going to be inevitable challenges and roadblocks. But since I am also one who always walks the path regardless and moves forward, I am inevitable. So my fullest expression, my happiness, my joy, my success, all the things I ever want are there for me so long as I just stay on the path.
I love that. I always say you can never fail as long as you don't give up, right? Yeah. You decide when to throw in the towel, and that's also still part of the path.
Yes.
But I think that inevitability is a really interesting concept I hadn't necessarily thought of in those words. Like, you are inevitable as long as you keep uncovering your own truth and pursuing that in a dedicated way, like not disowning who you are or throwing in the towel, giving up, trusting yourself down the path. But, as you are talking, I'm thinking about people listening. And what do you do about the naysayers when it comes to this? Like the clients who come up to you and say, you know what, like this feels a little too woo-woo for me. What about practical things? What if you get in a car crash tomorrow and you can no longer walk? What about the things you can't predict? Or the changes that come out of the blue that seem to be out of your control that impact your vision? That's a really tough question.
Can you reframe it for me?
Yeah, like I'm thinking of the people when you're like, it's inevitable. I guess I'm thinking about the things outside of your control.
Yeah, I mean, I think that like for a lot of people, they use more misery as a means to justify that they aren't inevitable, but that's a choice.
Yeah. Okay. So you see that
it's a very harsh choice, but it is a choice. And that unfortunately is the reality. It's like, I can't control what horrible things have happened to so-and-so people. And I can't control what horrible things are going to happen to me. The only thing that I have any power over is, do I trust that my life is worth living to the fullest, regardless of the unbelievable obstacles and surmounting horrors of my life, so to speak? And up until this point, I have found that that's why I can't speak with confidence on that, because I haven't experienced half of what some people have as far as pain is concerned. I have had my own versions of that, and I continue to move forward, and my life's the best it's ever been, which means that everyone has a choice. And there's many books that are out there that suggest this is also true with people who have been through very traumatic experiences and they've turned their lives around and they've made peace with it, etc. I just think that some people are in so much pain and they just become numb. And when they become numb, they become cynical. A cynical person is really just a person who's numb to their own emotional pain. That's all it is, which I've never really put words to until just now, but that's the truth. They're like crystallized pain. It's no longer liquid. You know what I'm saying? Now it's a solid. And what we do is we melt it with questions. And then it becomes liquid again and they can let go of it. And then they feel like gas. That's another conversation. I think about it as like, I need to stop. I'm going in that direction. Stop. Because I'm
interesting.
Something makes sense. So yeah, I think that it's easy for me to sit here and say it, but the truth is that it's up to you and it's your responsibility to create a mind and a heart and a body and a vessel that are abundant and that are open to letting go and that are peaceful. And I think a lot of people, because of their surrounding circumstances, and most importantly, because they don't have the correct community around them to help nurture them and rock them into a place where that solid can dissolve the liquid and it can be let go, it just gets harder and harder and harder. And they attract harder and harder and harder. And that's why for me, the community that I'm building, I know for you, the community you're building, your podcast is so important because it's a community of people that can speak and listen and be there for each other. And I think that if we all spent more time helping each other in this way and being like really listening and paying attention, everyone would feel a lot better. That's the easy way out of it. The practical way is like, why do you want to be miserable all the time? Like, if you don't have to be, like, why? You're just choosing to, and you can't change my mind on it because it's a choice. When my dad died, it really sucked. I didn't want him to fucking die. I had a dream about him this morning. I was crying in my dream. Still cry in my dreams. Wake up crying. I woke up like 2 weeks ago and I was just like, I just had seen him like crystal clear. Have you ever experienced that where a past loved one that just shows up like yes, he's right there? And I was just like, I was just crying and I woke up and I was crying still. And it was just so amazing. And I just felt so good to see him, but I can't control that he passed away and it was sudden, like all the different things that happened in that regard. All I could do was just say, I'm not going to let the pain that I feel override the inspiration of his life. He was inspiring. I want to let the inspiration flow and inspire me and guide me and light the way. And I feel like that frame of mind, that openness to the world and trust that it could be better continues to lead me to a place where my life gets better and better and more peaceful and more present and more enjoyable. And if you're listening to this and you really struggle with this stuff in general, but what I'm saying makes sense, it's up to you to find a community of people that can nurture you and help you get back to health. And that's okay. It's okay for you to be 45 years old, beat down, broken, feel miserable, feel like you're at the mercy of the world, and decide one day, like, I don't want to do this anymore. I'm ready to start making some changes, and I need to be surrounded with good people, and start surrounding yourself with them. Like, it goes on down the list. There's how many relationships people shouldn't be in, bad friends groups. You have fucked up relationships with your children. Like, you got to get space first from all the bullshit. Get space. And then find people. And then do the work. And you come back and your life will be a lot more enjoyable and you'll find some peace. I can't tell you when. I can't tell you how. I can't tell you any of those things. I just know it's inevitable if you do it. I think that's worth living for. At least I found.
First of all, thank you for sharing that about your dad. Very good example of how emotional pain can be fluid instead of crystallized. Like, I feel like you've done a lot of work to let that be a fluid part of you instead of this part that crystallizes. Because I actually can think of people in my life who have crystallized emotional pain. Yeah, and this is, it's hard to be in that space. And I think when we, if we're talking about self-doubt, I'm curious, like, how much of that emotional pain is trapped, right? And keeping you in that self-doubting place, and I think it's just interesting to reflect on that as far as, how is my emotional pain, like, increasing my feelings of self-doubt? And I think it has a lot to do with how you view the world and how you've let that pain kind of like stay within yourself.
100%. And on that topic, part of the issue is that there are very few people teaching the tools and methods to cleanse the wound. Like, if you get a scrape, we put a Band-Aid on and go to the doctor. When you have emotional trauma, only a handful of people are selected to facilitate, and they usually don't teach the methods. They just feed the Band-Aid. They put it on and go. We don't learn how to actually heal ourselves in that regard. And so I think that in this new era of humanity, what's happening right now, people like yourself, people like me, people like Autumn, etc., we're teaching people the tools to thaw themselves, right? Move out of this frozen emotional state and into a place of more love, more joy, more presence. And how could self-doubt not linger if it's not brought back into the whole? It's separate from. Humans have a magnetic disposition to not be far from each other. We want to be connected. So too, everything in our body, mentally, physically, emotionally, spiritually, wants to connect. If we're ever out of balance, we're trying to get back to. When we get sick, our body temperature is trying to get back as soon as possible. We're always trying to find balance. So too emotionally, so too mentally, so too physically, so too spiritually. But I just don't think people really get how we are. And because of that, it creates a lot of confusion. And confusion creates all kinds of nonsense. Mostly we're confused.
And that's part of being a human, right? Yeah. That confusion, it's finding your balance, finding your baseline, and finding healing through that.
But then even on the self-doubt, how could I not be doubtful if I'm confused? Which way do I go?
Oh my gosh.
Which way do I go? Right or left? Oh man, I don't know. Right kind of seems scary. Well, of course you're going to feel nervous when you're lost.
I firmly believe that confusion usually comes from your inner gaslighter, right? It's again, you're not listening to your inner truth. You don't think it's good enough. You don't want the truth that you're hearing, maybe. You're trying to blur the lines. And so I think confusion sometimes comes up as a tool to avoid the truth. And it's a version of self-doubt for sure. And it requires some serious checking in with yourself, just like self-doubt does. But one thing I did want to bring up to you, because I love this phrase that you say, legends find a way. Okay. I think about self-doubt and how that phrase is related, because legends find a way makes me think you are constantly overcoming rejection, barriers, self-doubt in order to find that way to where you need to be. Can you explain kind of what you mean by that? And if you see that link as well?
Yeah, I think what you just said is super accurate. I think for me, it just means putting my feet in the dirt and just committing to something all in, like fully committed. Like I'm committed to this, which means a commitment to me is like, I'm doing this. There is not a thing that can stop me from doing this. Literally not. I will just figure out a way. I'll find a way. And message find a way to me is just this awareness that I have the potential to do anything that I choose. And when I choose something and I commit to something, it's inevitable that I'm going to have it. I'm going to do it. I'm going to create it. I'm going to make it. And it's something that I say to all of my clients to help them remind themselves that they have infinite power of creativity over their lives. And, I used to say like live the life of your dreams a lot, but I've changed that to living the life of my own creation. I really want to put the power back into my own hands of like, I really am constantly sculpting this world that I live in. And if I commit to something, it's inevitable and there's absolutely nothing can stop me. So legends always find a way through whatever it is, whoever it is. And yeah, I just find it to be really pleasing on the ears and just enjoyable and great to experience. And it's just a foundational part of who I am. I don't believe in the impossibilities when everything around me suggests that the imagination is infinite because there are so many new things that will and have yet to be born or created or built. And I'm much more trusting of my naturalness than I am society's governance.
Much more trusting of your own naturalness than society's governance.
Yeah.
Meaning that you
I trust
viewing yourself.
Yeah, I trust how I am more than how they see me or they tell me I am.
That is something that so many people struggle with.
How could you not? We've been fucking brainwashed. You know what I mean? We don't have any contrast. Like, think about this. Like in the 1800s, when people landed on the frontier and they saw Native Americans for the first time and saw them doing the war dance and the sun dance and speaking to their ancestors and talking about how the eagle flies and seeing the relationship between all things, they were probably really culture shocked, but also a little curious of like, what the heck? Like, why? Maybe some, but why do we do things a specific way? We don't see that on a regular basis. We go to freaking Starbucks and everyone drinks Starbucks. We go to the mall, everyone shops. We go to the gym, everyone's lifting. Everyone does the same thing. There's not a lot of contrast. There's a guy I think is really great. His name's Terrence McKenna. He did a lot of study and wrote a lot of material on what he calls the archaic revival, which is like this revival of a lot of things we're talking about. This like return to naturalness, return to freedom, return to how humans were before culture, before civilization. When we were like hunter-gatherer tribes and we lived in the woods and we were like much more connected. And so for me, the government is new, but we're pretty old. So I'm gonna trust our intuition more than somebody who makes really questionable decisions all the time, saying that they're really good for me too. But they do things that I think are just totally immoral. Behind the back of the society, they're doing effed up stuff. And you look at our government officials, it's like, okay, these are the people I'm listening to.
That's so interesting. Yeah. In the perspective of the world, that innate human wisdom that you have inside is actually way more experienced than
100,000 years.
Than the society we are shaping our lives around.
United States
we're shaping
200 years old, 100,000 years. Come on.
We're shaping our lives around some like newbie over here.
We're like wise old men listening to infants cry and listening to their cries and following their orders. It's crazy. Like, I don't know you. And that's me. I don't know you. Until I know you, I'm not listening to you. I don't do that. And I call that reason. I'm reasonable. I'm a very reasonable person. Extremely. You give me a good argument. Oh, wow. Interesting. But if you're bullshitting me, my tolerance level is like 0. I don't do bullshit. Like, you're full of shit. I know what you want. You want me to harvest my energy for your gain. But that's not how humans work. We work in cooperation with each other. I'm not your like subject to play with. I'm a human being and I value my freedom. And don't get me wrong. I say that with the caveat that I grew up in a country that, as free as it is, probably has a million other things that I can't see behind the scenes that are happening that are keeping me where I'm at. But here I feel free. Here I feel free. Here I feel free. That's a good start. That makes sense.
Yeah. I like that. So what I hear, honestly, is that you give so much more credit and authority, to your own inner wisdom than like what's built up around us. And I think that helps to eliminate self-doubt, just recognizing the vastness of that in context of the rest of the world. Like your innate knowing, your nature has so much more credibility than the structures that have been put in place so recently in the history of the world. Really interesting way to think about it. I, again, appreciate that because I haven't put it in that sort of perspective before.
Well, I think I have to. Otherwise, my ego will think that I know better than. But when I look at the trees that have been around for 450 million years, I'm like, maybe I don't know better.
Yeah.
They're much older than me. They seem like they're very sustainable. They know their place.
Yeah.
How come I continue to not know mine? Right? Like, what am I missing that they are aware of? Like, I think this is also like, I had someone ask me, who are my mentors the other day? And I'm like, dude, everything is my mentor. Like, I'm watching the world and trying to understand how it all works together. And there's harmony. But in myself, I had to work really hard to build harmony. And I think a lot of people don't have inner harmony. Thus, they're at conflict with themselves. And we can see that. Their eyes are all effed up. They look asleep. They like their behavior is very back and forth. They say one thing, do another. But I feel like if I'm being genuine and I'm being real and I read history and I'm learning about the world, I see these very consistent patterns that like all of the creatures and all of the organisms on Earth operate in a very similar flow. And I'm trying to get as close to understanding that and being in the energy of that as possible. And the closer I get to it, the better I feel about myself and the more clarity I have on who I am. And the further I am from that, the more confused I feel, the more alone I feel, overall, the worse I feel. And most importantly, the more disconnected I feel from everyone and everything around me. And I've lived that life. And that was really, really tough. And it led me to make some decisions that I would never make. That like, if I look at myself in the mirror, I'm like, how could you? How could I? I was disconnected. I wasn't in communion. Of course, anyone's just vulnerable to that. And I think that's an important thing to be aware of. There's a great quote. I forget who said it, but he said, every saint has a past and every sinner has a future. And I just felt like that really highlights how vulnerable all of us are, good or bad, good deed, bad deed, of falling and prey to the opposite. We have to be really vigilant with ourselves. I have to be vigilant with myself and how I live my life, my lifestyle, and constantly being conscious of the different distractions, the different temptations, the different parts of myself that I don't have communion with that are kind of running free. But maybe positive, maybe negative, maybe past experiences led it to be negative, maybe past experiences led it to be positive, but just keeping my ego, quote, ego in check to simplify it. And I find that that's led me again to just a much more peaceful life. And some people want it all. And to me, all is a sustainable lifestyle that I really enjoy, a ton of peace and just great people and great relationships. And those things feel freeing as heck to me. And that's closer to how my ancestors lived. And I feel like in ways, how as harsh as their life was, the toughness and the awareness that they had counterbalanced it in some ways. So there's a balance between this new world we're living in and saw a lot of the principles from the old world that passed. And I think that somewhere in the middle there is the new world. It's like there's abundance and there's connection, but there's also technology and innovation.
My dog is starting to whine, sadly. I will say a theme that's coming up for you as we talk about self-doubt, it's reconnecting with self. And then the words, in communion with self, in communion with community, and then in communion with the past, right? In a way of like recognizing the history of the world and your own ancestry and evidence that you have evolved from your own past. So I like this theme of communion and self-communion, communion with others, as far as healing this feeling of self-doubt that is inevitable when it comes to being human. So Graham, with that, we're coming to an end of our show today. I wanted to just turn it over to you one more time. And for people who are trapped in a feeling of self-doubt right now, what is something you would love to, like a piece of wisdom or advice they can take with them as they leave this episode today?
The question, are you ready to do something about it? Be honest. Like if you say no, then just keep listening to every podcast on self-doubt until you say And so you say yes. And then when you say yes, go get a journal and start asking yourself questions like, why do I doubt myself? Why am I letting whatever the answer to that stop me from going to where I want to be? Who is in my head? What voices are in my head that are stopping me from listening to my own voice? When did I stop listening to my own voice? Like getting clarity on the past and how I got here. If you can get clarity on how you got here, then you know where you're going. For me, that's been the exact same trajectory. Like I got clarity on myself, and then I was like, well, how about the world? How did I get here? Like, how did the world get here? Like, who are my ancestors? How did they get here? And that led me on to this whole new level of me questioning the world and how things happen, right? So it's just a larger version of that. And I think if you say yes and you answer those questions and you start down the path, the self-doubt will go away. And then for those of you who answered, no, I'm not ready, keep listening and keep waiting until you're ready, or just start now, or keep waiting. I mean, I don't know. I can't tell you to do anything. You got to decide. I don't have to tell you. I'm sure I told you a billion times about that. But that's what I would say. I would say get a journal is a great place to start to reflect and feel like you're in open communion with yourself. And I find that to be a great place for me and for all my clients. And I always say, whoever writes makes the rules. So if you start writing out who you are, start making the rules on who you are, it's way easier to listen to your rules, and you can get rid of some of the rules that other people have put upon you.
Mm-hmm. I love it. Well, thank you so much, Graham. That was such a fun interview, and I really appreciate you taking the time to be on the show today. I think this interview will offer the listeners so many perspectives that are new that they maybe haven't thought about or processed before. So I appreciate that perspective. Thank you so much.
You're so welcome. It was an absolute pleasure. I really hope that everybody had at least something they could take away. And I just really appreciate everyone listening. And I really appreciate all of you just supporting Meg so much. Such a great person. And she has so much life, so much light.
Oh, well,
and
thank you.
The most exciting thing is that Meg's life is in so many ways just beginning. And you're full of so much love and so much light. You do so much good. And you're like moving in, you're expanding right now. And so I just appreciate everybody for supporting your expansion and getting to be a part of that. To me, it's like, you ever seen like a whale in the ocean, all the fish under the...
Yeah.
That's what's happening right now.
Nice. I love that. Yeah. A whale is one of my spirit animals. I love it. Okay. Thank you, Graham. It was great to talk to you.